So when I first got involved with Bitcoin, I was a little confused, and we could talk about that. But I'll play you the first song that I ever wrote for this community. We'll open it up there.
To a nation based on war. I wanted to be free, nothing holding me back from where I want to go. Thought about it, what was the choice that I made? It was to take away the money, don't give up your money, use Bitcoin whenever you pay. Use Bitcoin whenever you pay. I didn't want to waste any of my time working for the government. I wanted to be kind, open up my mind, just like an instrument. I thought about it, what was the choice that I made? It was to take away the money, don't give up your money, use Bitcoin whenever you pay. Use Bitcoin whenever you pay. What a little crypto can do. No longer a slave. I don't have to work until the grave. So many times I cried to myself that we didn't have a chance. Nakamura came along with more than a song, gave the labor back to man. Thought about it, what was the choice that I made? It was to take away the money, don't give up your money, use Bitcoin whenever you pay. Use Bitcoin whenever you pay. Use Bitcoin whenever you pay. Thanks. All right. We're loose. We're feeling good. All right. Thank you, everybody. So how in the world did a musician come to Bitcoin, right? Totally weird. So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of my background story, and then we'll get to the Ross Ulbricht story. So I grew up in New Jersey. My mom was from Warsaw. My father was from Brooklyn. And they were sort of anti-state all along. I mean, coming from a communist country, she wasn't a really big fan of that kind of thing. And I was always very interested in how you could use music to change the world, especially after I heard Cat Stevens sing Peace Train. It was like a little light bulb went off in my head, and I was like, oh, wow, you can use this to, to change society. And I was always very worried about, how do you make the most equitable world for everybody? How do you improve the world? And I was always thinking about that. In high school, I was reading a ton of different dystopian novels, scaring the hell out of myself with the 1984 variety of premonitions, I guess. They weren't really meant to be instruction manuals. And yet here we find ourselves. But, back when I was growing up, there wasn't really anything to throw my support behind, right? Everybody was relatively at peace. Everything was fine. The U.S. was living like little, happy little clams. And then I found out about Britney Spears in about 97 when she came out. And so to me, that was almost like the death of music. Because, look, I mean, everybody likes a little bit of Britney or a little bit of, dance music. But if all of your music is that, I mean, that's not really very good for everybody else. And it started to become like a pop project, right? So I went on to Berklee College of Music. I came back to New York, and I started working at a variety of different recording studios. And I soon got a little bit frustrated seeing who actually had access to the studios. So you had a lot of funded artists that were coming in from the record labels, but the music was really bad, and they wasted their time, and they wasted their money, and it would really grate on my nerves. I was also performing around New York City. People are saying, oh, you need a niche. I'm like, what the heck is that? I'm a singer-songwriter. What do you want from me? But, you had to start thinking about that because it started to turn into this do-it-yourself culture. And I still didn't really have anything to throw my weight behind, but I continued to, research and educate myself. And eventually I found out about the Federal Reserve in 2011. And that was really when the light bulb went off. And I was like, these guys, they got to go. So, I figured out how all of these wars were basically funded through central banking and, of course, a lot of the other issues that come along with it. And so I joined the Ron Paul Revolution, which, for those of you who are not from America, Ron Paul was probably our greatest politician of our lifetimes by far. And he was amazing because he brought people from the left and from the right together. And there was a very beautiful kind of convergence. And then what ended up happening was, whoa, I'm so surprised. It was a rigged system, right? So the Republican Party, which he was part of, they would consistently change the rules and keep him out of the actual voting process. And the media would completely black him out. You wouldn't be able to see him. They would say a couple hundred people showed up. Well, it was thousands of people at these different events. So it was very, very frustrating. And I was lucky that the guys from BitPay, Tony Galippi and Stephen Pear, sponsored a performance that I had. And they said, let me tell you all about Bitcoin. And so they came to New York and they told me about it for about 3 hours. My eyes were really glazed because, of course, I had no experience in technology and finance, kind of boring. But I went along with it and I bought some Bitcoins at $11. And amazingly enough, I became more interested when they went up. So I started thinking about it a little bit more, and that's why I wrote the Bitcoin jingle, because I thought to myself, here I am, I know all about the Fed, they're my arch enemy, and I couldn't figure out that Bitcoin could be the way to finally get back the power for the people. And so I went down to Argentina, I sang the song, I became friends with Andreas Antonopoulos, and a lot of other interesting people, and really close with the LTB team, Let's Talk Bitcoin. And so Adam B. Levine, maybe some of you have heard that podcast, he and I decided to create the world's first artist cryptocurrency. So we used Counterparty. At the time, there were no ERC-20 tokens, nothing like that. And the goal of it was to really connect me directly with my fans and solve that problem that I had found earlier on. And you can even take that problem a step further to the controlling of the message, right? Because we've been at war in the US for 20 years, and I haven't heard a single anti-war song on the radio. Why? Artists love war now? Since when? It's preposterous. So we decided to create a way for artists to basically be a little bit more independent from the system. We took the existing Indiegogo model, right? Like a crowd fund, and we just blockchained it. So we created a Tatiana coin token using Counterparty. And if you wanted to support my third album, you could donate. You would get Tatiana coins. You could send them around to your friends. You could hold on to them and buy something in my store in the future. You'd get a discount. And also the point was to sort of circumvent some of the problems that I saw in social media. Now, I was a little hustler, and I was really trying very hard to take advantage of all the different technologies available to me. So when I first found out about social media, I thought, wow, this is great. I'm poor. I need to make friends to like my music, but also for regular friendship. And so, I would build out these audiences on these social media platforms. But then every time the platform would fall out of vogue, or I just didn't want to be a part of it anymore, I couldn't actually take my fans with me. And so by creating an artist coin, it essentially removed the middleman between artists and fans. And so we created Tatiana coin, and I went on to record an album called Keep the Faith. I'll be playing some songs of that today. And I guess we can come back a little bit to the music thing, and let's go off into the journey about when I found out about the Silk Road, because that really influenced my third album. So that's Ross Ulbricht. He is now in jail. That's a picture of Ross Ulbricht. Oh, it's nothing. Okay. All right. Am I doing something wrong? Okay, well, I'll tell you guys. So Ross Ulbricht, have you guys all heard of the Silk Road? Who's familiar with the Silk Road? A lot of people know. Okay, cool. So just a quick review for those of you that don't know. The Silk Road was one of the very first use cases for Bitcoin. And it really, some would posit, gave it the first real start that it needed, the traction. Now, it's a controversial site. It was almost like an eBay for drugs with ratings, but they didn't only sell drugs.
It was a majority of marijuana, but they also had medicines. They had Bibles, because in certain countries, Bibles are illegal, like all sorts of things. And they had a very strict code. They didn't allow people to sell child porn. They were selling weapons for a very short time, and then it didn't even catch on, and they just kind of got rid of it. They basically were unified under libertarian principles. So they believed that they owned their bodies. If they want to drink bleach, that's their prerogative. And so it wasn't just a bunch of druggies that were like, oh man, I want to get drugs on the internet. It was actually a bit of an intellectual revolution. There was a lot of discussions in the groups. They even had a medical professional available. So if you had a drug problem and you needed help, a lot of times if people have drug problems, they don't want to go to, especially if somebody's overdosing, they don't want to go to somebody. So there was a doctor and they could talk to him. And eventually what happened was, though, was Ross Ulbricht was arrested as the Dread Pirate Roberts. So the Dread Pirate Roberts reference is from The Princess Bride. And so in The Princess Bride, the Dread Pirate Roberts is this bad character, but the whole premise of it is that he's a rotating character. So it's a new person comes in as a Dread Pirate Roberts. And that point is very important because the government posited that Ross was the only Dread Pirate Roberts, and he was solely responsible for the website. What we now know, or, well, what a lot of people would say is that that's not completely true. So let's go through some of these slides. This is a list of all the different things that they were selling, so you can get just a better idea. Now, remember, they did sell heroin. They sold bad drugs. You know, drugs are bad. But what was nice about it was the rating system. It certainly made it a lot safer. There was even a college study done on the Silk Road, and it said that it made the drug trade much safer because you're taking the dangerous elements out of the street, and you're also making sure that the drugs are actually what people are trying to buy. A lot of times people will die because they're taking something that's cut with something bad. Obviously, drugs are a problem. People shouldn't do them, but if they're going to do them, you want them to be safe about it, especially if it's someone you love. Again, there's the restricted items, right? So this is from the trial exhibit. So this was on the site. This was like a well-known concept. So what happened? Ross got taken from from California. The New York people took him over to New York, and they tried him there. And the trial was really, really fishy. First of all, there were two government agents. Well, there were two government agents that worked on the site. And they were later on, after Ross was busted, they were busted for stealing money and extorting money from people and blackmailing people on the site. And so these guys are serving less than 5 years, which is kind of gross because they're certainly not paid to steal from criminals. That's like a double criminal. So anyway, on the other hand, Ross was not allowed to bring in several witnesses. For example, Andreas Antonopoulos wanted to be an expert witness, and they would not allow him to testify. They drowned the family with tons and tons of documentation. It was a total nightmare, a hose job. And so he was found guilty of all nonviolent crimes. So you have to remember, a lot of people, they talk about the Silk Road and the murder for hire. What the U.S. government does, and I believe this probably happens in other countries, is sometimes they will trump up the charges so people will not like that person, because Ross had a lot of support from the community. So the suspicion is that they kind of trumped up this whole murder for hire thing, so this way he would be less appealing. But just so you know, and if anybody ever asks you, those charges were completely dropped. There's no proof of them. I hung out with a guy who was the supposed murder victim, and he's a Ross supporter. So Curtis Green. So these guys, on the other hand, what's their excuse? So when the judge sentenced Ross to double life plus 40 years to like a guy less than 30 years old who had a physics scholarship, remember, El Chapo is getting less time than Ross Ulbricht. All right, think about that. And so when she sentenced him, she used, number one, judge found facts, which is when the jury isn't allowed to consider certain facts, but the judge can consider them. So that's why she was like, oh, you're violent, because she heard about the murder for hire charges. But that's like going in for a traffic ticket and they'll say, oh, I heard you beat up this old lady, you're going to jail. I mean, what are you talking about? That's not even what the trial is for. So that was scary. But what was also very scary was that she was quoting his political beliefs as the reason why she was trying to give him this scary sentence, because she thought that his political beliefs were no longer were dangerous, and she also thought that this would encourage others to make another Silk Road. And so they don't want that, right? But you know what's funny is that the next Silk Road guy, well, we'll talk about him soon. So this is a little speech or letter Ross wrote to Bitcoin Magazine, if you want to kind of read a little bit about him. So before I keep going with the case, let me give you a little bit of context. So when I met Lynn, I was like most people who heard about the story and thought, like, why would anyone do this? It seems like a very bad business idea that you would get in a lot of trouble for. But then I got a lot of that insight into it. And so as I became sort of an advocate, I started writing with Ross. And then I was the first person from the community to actually go and visit him, which was probably one of the greatest / most horrible experiences of my life, because seeing the horror of the prison industrial complex in person is completely different than anything that you can really imagine. And also, Ross was so incredible. He's a really, really remarkable young man who has been put through a lot of trials. Okay, he made a mistake, bad idea. Think of it what you will, but no matter what, he certainly doesn't deserve double life plus 40 years. And instead of spending his time there being bitter and miserable, he spends his time tutoring people. He's trying to do what he can in terms of like writing positive things. And just in general, I remember I wrote him some news about one of the government agents. They tried to run away, and because they were sentenced to jail, and then they caught them, and I thought, good. And I told Ross, yeah. And he said, oh, you know, they must be really sad, and they must be really afraid. It's very hard for a police officer to get into prison. And I'm thinking, this guy is responsible for you being in here forever, and you're still managing to find some compassion within you for this other person. And it's been, you know, a really nice lesson for me to appreciate what I have and to maybe try and control the brain from going into the dark places. So I decided to write a song in order to bring attention to the case because it had such a bad reputation. So I'll play that song for you now. There was a man who did the unspoken. He looked for freedom from the violence. No one is perfect when there's new ground broken. A mess is made and someone gets blamed. He had a dream of harmony as you wish to live out your own. We cannot stand for this, cannot have you fall along the Silk Road. This ain't the movies, there's a war in the streets. The innocent are in jail. We pray for justice and we wanna be free, and hope truth will prevail. He had a dream of harmony as you wish to live out your own. We cannot stand for this, cannot have you fall along the Silk Road. We can't give up, we cannot quit. Don't be afraid. We have a voice, and this is it. Let the light show the way. He had a dream of harmony as you wish to live out your own. We cannot stand for this, cannot have you fall along the Silk Road. We cannot stand for this, cannot have you fall along the Silk Road.
Thank you. So thank you. The cool thing about that song was that it kind of makes people think a little bit, right? And maybe cry. That's what I'm hoping for. Because, you've got to kind of hit people on the heartstrings. And so what ended up happening was I was looking to put out the record, and I was thinking, oh gosh, I got to do an album cover. And I had actually had a present from Ross for my birthday. He is an excellent artist. He hand draws things. And so I decided to use that as the album cover. And this kind of brings us back to full circle what's the importance of art and activism and cryptocurrency. And, if I was signed to a major record label, do you think that I would be allowed to put a political prisoner's artwork on my album? Maybe, maybe not. But I don't appreciate anybody telling me what kind of art I should make. But I also want to eat. So that's why we need sort of a little bit of a combo. Let me show you guys the artwork. Hold on. Isn't that cool? Yeah, really beautiful, I thought. So let's get back to the case, right? More depressing stuff. So here we've got Ross giving us some inspirational words. Bitcoin needs us to continue guiding it with the values it was founded on that gave it its potential. That's sort of like this conference, right? We must keep our focus on decentralization, privacy, and empowering individuals. It is a technology with the power to make abstractions like peace and equality into reality, but it's up to us to embody such ideals and be role models for the ever-growing Bitcoin community and for Bitcoin itself. So obviously he was a really big fan of the reason why we Bitcoin. Here's how the justice system works. We've got Jan Slomp, 10 years, biggest drug dealer on the site, great job. Steve Sadler, 5 years. Peter Nash, 17 months. This other large drug dealer, 5 years. Gary Davis, 6.5 years. Carl Force, corrupt agent, 6.5 years. Maybe he'll get out with good behavior. Sean Bridges, corrupt agent, 8 years. I'm sure he'll be out soon. Blake Benthal. Now, this is an interesting one because part of the reason that the justification for this extraordinarily harsh and unprecedented sentence was in order to deter future Silk Roads from happening. Why is it that Silk Road 2.0 gets no sentence at all? They're just like, you're good, but like, how does that even happen, right? And so then you've got the other creator with 5 years and 4 months. Oh, I'm sorry, then I misspoke on that one. So I guess he was just an administrator. No biggie. Let him go. And then Ross Ulbricht gets double life plus 40 years, which is absurd. And let me tell you something. He's in a max security prison. So there's a lot of not so good stuff that happens there. But what you'd be interested to find out how many people in the prison are actually nonviolent drug criminals. So these are these two wonderful gentlemen. Then we've got, oh, look. Looks like they deleted evidence. That seems fair, right? And you know how this ended up. So Ross got his, he was sentenced. And then they brought it for appeal in the New York courts. And they said no. Shocker. Very corrupt court system, specifically in New York and the U.S. And then they brought it to the U.S. Supreme Court, top of the line. They had one of the absolute best attorneys in the country for appeals in the Supreme Court. And they didn't accept the case. So what does that mean? That means that Ross needs a pardon or a commutation of the sentence or some kind of a resolution that isn't really provided by our legal system. There is a form that they're filing stating that his attorney was incompetent, and there's a lot of, I'll leave that up to you guys. Look at how he handled that. But basically, they're making the case that the attorney was not properly advising Ross, and that would be really the only solution. And you would think that when there's deleted evidence, then why are we even using that evidence at all? And that was another weird thing, is that they used a lot of digital evidence in the Silk Road case. And as we all know, digital evidence can be faked. So what kind of precedent does that set, right? And remember how I said they thought that Ross was the only Dread Pirate Roberts? Well, how is it that somebody logged into the Dread Pirates account after Ross was already in prison? They don't let this guy touch the internet. He can't send his email for the rest of his life. and he's in there like logging in. Oh, just got to check on my stats. You know what I mean? Like, what's going on? So obviously, there's more than one person that was running the Silk Road, but Ross was the fall guy, and that works. Shocker! The Silk Road murder for hire plot was actually set up by a DEA agent. Aren't they doing a great job? Tax dollars at work, folks. And as you can see, they were completely dropped after. And what was interesting about them having the case in Maryland, which was the murder for hire case, was that they also had a lot of digital evidence that they never released to the family. And there's, it's possible that there may be some very good evidence that would have been helpful for Ross in there, but we'll never know. Now, if you want to know a little bit more about what this messy legal case actually was, you can go to the website and go to freeross.org and check out Railroaded. It's a podcast series that is basically detailing all the information about the case. Here's a fun fact. So this picture was taken in Colorado. These guys are all serving life sentences for non-violent drug charges. Not only is that cruel, but it's expensive, and it's gross, and it's in Colorado, the weed state. How are these people still sitting in cages? It's amazing, in a bad way. So, here's Ross before. He's an Eagle Scout with his, he had over 100 people write letters on his behalf at court. There's a lot of people that they say that they'll be your friend, but when you're on trial for something like that, they're not going to write a letter for you. To have over 100 people vouch for you is really, really incredible. There's no excuse to keep him. Look, even put him in jail for 10 years, whatever. Is he worse than El Chapo? Because that's what the government thinks. So here's something that he wrote to people. He's always kind of writing things to sort of inspire people. And one of the highlights, actually, let's read this together. Vengeance and cruelty are not aspects of our nature to be honored and institutionalized. They are base and destructive. They hurt all parties. Our families and communities are hurting. Humanity is hurting. The pain of your fellow human being is your pain too, even though if it is locked away in a remote prison. We can do better. We have the potential to rise above the darkness, to be proud of how humanely we treat prisoners and how few we need to brand with that label. Instead, we hand out years, decades, and lifetimes of imprisonment to virtually every person the government targets. We keep building cells like the one I'm writing from. And it's true. We have the biggest population of prisoners in the world. And guess what? We come for you, too. I was really shocked when there were people in the New York jail that were never in America. They had nothing to do with the U.S., not citizens, nothing. And they were in there for drug stuff. They're not even in the U.S. Like, go bother somebody in the United States and not just randomly harassing people all around the country over some pot. Because, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, frustrating. So this is a really good point. Prisoners are not inventory. We are not numbers or statistics. We're human beings, and we don't deserve this. Another thing that you probably may not have in your mind, but you should remember, is that a lot of these guys are forced to work. So technically, it's voluntary to work in the prison, but how voluntary is anything in the prison, right? And so they're paying them anywhere from 10 cents an hour to $1 an hour, and then they're making all the profit off of that. I'm not sure how that isn't considered slavery. So every time somebody does something bad, they just basically get thrown into work camp. There's a lot of speculation around the case saying that this is going to set a lot of precedent, essentially saying that the website owner is responsible for the activities on their website, whether or not they're participating in them. So it's obviously caught the attention of a lot of different people. And then, as you can see, there's the album cover, completely funded with crypto. So that was cool. This is the family's Twitter, Facebook, socials, and stuff. They certainly need donations, always, but not everybody's got money, and that's okay. But what you can do is you can
tweet about it, you can tell your friends about it, and you can kind of try and educate people a little bit about this specific topic because it's so misinformed. If you have government connections, any kind of like press connections, that kind of thing, be willing to think outside the box. And luckily, Lynn has a lot of different people helping her. We've been hoping to have President Trump do a pardon or a commutation, I guess. So it's a mixed bag with him. We'll see. There are a lot of people that support Ross. So maybe that will sway his interest. And it's nice to see Kim Kardashian advocating for people. I mean, who knew that was going to happen, but great job. And so here is my information if you want to check in. So let's back it up to the music thing, right? So we went into the Ross rabbit hole, and we're all going to tell our friends about it. So now what happens, right? On my end, I've been trying to raise the attention for his case. I've been trying to educate myself about other victims of the drug war and the prison systems. And in the meantime, what happened with Tatiana Coin was after we launched it, it was sort of like we had a car and we didn't have any roads, right? So where are you going to drive this thing? And so we created a platform called Tokenly with a subsequent music product called Token.fm. And so what that does is it allows artists and their fans to connect directly. You can message directly with your fans. You can not only create streams, but also incentivize your fans to share your music and then let them share in some of your spoils. And there's just a lot of neat features that I think can allow artists to have a lot more control over their careers. We're all in a very weird situation worldwide, politically. There's riots everywhere. You don't always see them on the news, but they're going on. And I think that, if I never heard Peace Train, I probably wouldn't be standing here today, right? And I really want to be a part of making that kind of future a reality for other artists where they actually have a viable career and where they can actually push back. Because if you look at the 60s and the 70s, I think a lot of the reasons why we had those massive changes in the US was because of the culture. And the culture is driven by music and by art. So it's cool to see some artists here in the room too. So, it's definitely a passion project of mine. I'm happy to talk to you guys about Token FM afterward. And we're doing some fundraising around that. So I wanted to finish out this talk because I think I'm going to play some songs for you guys later. Maybe we'll even have time for two. But I wanted to play you guys a song that kind of like led me down this path a little bit. And it's actually a cover song. So I remember when I first liked Ron Paul, you had to do a talk in order to do this. There was basically a bunch of army guys, and they were marching in Washington saying, "The troops support Ron Paul." And so we all gathered. It was so cold in D.C. in front of the big Washington Monument. And we were all giving speeches, and there's over 1,000 veterans in the audience. And so I won a slot to get to talk on stage because I gave a little, video about, oh, Ron Paul's so great. And so I went up on stage, and I started to play. It's a big gig, right? Over 1,000 people. It's cold. I'm shivering. And of course, the guitar doesn't work. Nothing works. The microphone's all scratchy. So I had to go acoustic. And then, my friend from the side of the stage, he's like, "They'll listen to you. Come on, girl." And I'm like, all right. And so I walked up a little bit closer to the stage, and we all walked a little bit closer. And it was just this really, really beautiful moment where, I don't know, I just felt like this great synchronicity with everybody and this great sense of power. And so I performed this song. It's an old Bob Dylan song, and unfortunately, it's still relevant today. But maybe with the help of everybody in this room, we can make it just a thing of the past. So the song is called Masters of War. Come, you masters of war, you that build all the guns, you that build the death planes, you that build all the bombs, you that hide behind walls, you that hide behind us. I just want you to know I can see through your mask. You that never done nothing but kill to destroy.
You play with my world like it's your little toy. You put a gun in his hand and you hide from his eyes, and you turn and run farther when the fast bullets fly. Like Judas of old, you lie and deceive. A world war can be won. You want me to believe, but I see through your eyes, and I see through your brain, like I see through the water that runs down my drain. You fasten all the triggers for the others to fire. Then you sit back and watch as the death count gets higher. You hide in your mansions while young people's blood falls out of their bodies and is buried in the mud. You've thrown the worst fear that can never be heard. Fear to bring children into the world, for threatening my baby, unborn and unnamed. You ain't worth the blood that runs in your veins. So let me ask you one question. Is your money that good? Will it buy you forgiveness? Do you think that it could? And I think you will find when your death takes its soul, even Jesus could never give what you do. And I hope that you die, and your death will come soon. I will follow your casket on a pale afternoon, and I'll watch while you're lowered down into your deathbed, and I'll stand over your grave till I'm sure that you're dead. Thank you. So, I thank you very much. I think we're coming up against the time, but let's all keep in mind why we do this, right? There's a lot of new interest in crypto, and that's really awesome. And it's important to work toward adoption, and we do have to work with existing infrastructures. But there's a war machine out there, and it's not your friend. And we have to keep that in mind, because that's really, I think, going to give us the fuel to keep going. You guys want to do one more song before I close it out? Yeah? All right, cool. I'm getting the go-ahead over there. They're like, all right, cool. So I'll sing you guys a song. How much time do I have, guys? All right, couple songs, fine. We'll do it. We'll have a fun song, then we'll finish it with like a heart-wrenching song. So I have had some struggles over the years, and there's some shady people out there, and sometimes you have a contract, and guess what? Doesn't mean anything. You can light that thing on fire because you can't really enforce it. So what I did was I wrote a song about it, and this song is called "Call You Out." Today, they told me I'd be paid to play. I'm counting on to pay all of my fast asleep. Need to cool the summer heat. So yeah, if you don't mind, I need my cash. Or I will call you out. Gotta ask the people for their help, 'cause we can't afford the crooked courts anymore. Yeah, we will call you out, 'cause you tell the cops and they won't listen. Benefit a broken system these days. Left New York to go to Chile. Far away wasn't pretty, but I dust myself off and walk away. I'm looking up and I won't be down, 'cause I get to play songs all around the world. It is so beautiful to see. But I'll still call you out. Gotta ask the people for their help, 'cause we can't afford the crooked courts anymore. Yeah, we will call you out, 'cause you tell the cops they won't listen. Benefit a broken system these days. Because I'm just some girl, you'll frighten me with scary words and try to touch me when I'm on the stage. It feels romantic to be wrote, but you know, my friend, it ain't a joke when the bad guy always gets away. So I will call you out. Gotta ask the people for their help, 'cause we can't afford the crooked courts anymore. Yeah, we will call you out, 'cause you tell the cops and they won't listen. Benefit of broken systems these days. These days. Thanks. All right, so this last song I'm going to play for you is called Keep the Faith. And you guys all got to kind of keep that in mind, right? Get a little discouraged, start seeing, you know, all the Lambo nonsense going around. But, you know, I encourage you guys to keep the faith, so. All alone in my bed, fighting dragons again. No, I can't stop the tears when they fall. How did I get to this place? All that work seems a waste. I thought I had friends on my side. You never know what life has in store. It can take a little while to learn to keep the faith. You gotta learn to keep the faith. You know, it's been a real bad year. Lots of sorrow and fear. And I wonder where I took the wrong turn. But I've had time to reflect, gave myself some respect, and I'll face the whole big world mighty strong. Keep the memories that make love from war. No, you never know what life has in store. It can take a little while to learn to keep the faith. gotta learn to keep the faith. You go rolling ahead, and I cry a little bit. No, you won't find your way back to me. But at the end of the day, I thank God when I pray, 'cause it was better than drinking alone. Keep the memories that make love from war. No, you never know what life has in store. It can take a little while to learn to keep the faith. You gotta learn to keep the faith. You gotta learn to keep the faith. Thank you so much, everybody. My name's Tatiana Moroz. Thank you very much for bringing me out. Support the guys upstairs, too. Please make sure you're checking out all of their stuff. If you're interested in following up with me, I also have a podcast, The Tatiana Show, a crypto relationship show called Proof of Love, if you want to have something a little bit more fun. And I do a lot of stuff with Token.fm and my own companies. So come say hi. Bye. Thanks.